The silence starts the moment you say something they don't like. No shouting, no argument, just a door closing a little too carefully, a phone left face down, a room that suddenly feels 20 degrees colder. Nothing said, everything communicated, and somewhere in that silence, you start doing something strange. You start apologizing for a crime you're not sure you committed. This isn't about someone who needs space to think. That's a different thing entirely, and a healthy one. This is about silence used on a schedule, deployed the moment you get too close to a truth they don't want to hear, withdrawn the moment you've suffered enough to comply. It has a start time, it has an end time, and both are decided by the person holding the silence, never by you. 2,500 years ago, a military strategist wrote a manual on exactly this kind of warfare, except he wasn't writing about marriages or friendships. He was writing about armies. Strange as it sounds, the tactics hold up almost perfectly. Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War during a period of constant conflict in ancient China, and one of his central ideas has quietly outlived every battlefield it was written for. I quote Sun Tzu, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." End quote. This is not a philosophy of restraint. It is a philosophy of efficiency. Why spend energy on open conflict when you can win by making the other side exhaust themselves first? Silent treatment operates on the exact same logic. No accusation was made, so there's nothing to defend against. No demand was stated, so there's no way to comply. You're left holding a conflict with no visible shape, and your mind, starved of information, starts filling in the blanks, usually with guilt. Sun Tzu also wrote about the value of an enemy who cannot read your position. If they don't know what you want, they can't strategize around it. Applied here, the silence isn't empty. It's a wall built specifically so you can't see what's on the other side of it, which means you can't plan a way through. Here's the thing about that. Silence, in this context, isn't the absence of communication. It is communication, engineered to put the entire burden of resolution on the person who didn't create the conflict. One man, centuries later and a continent away, dealt with the exact same tactic, aimed at him by people who answered to nobody. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire during almost 2 decades of near-constant war, plague, and betrayal, including from people inside his own inner circle. He wasn't spared political silence either. Advisors withheld counsel strategically. Senators postponed decisions to pressure him. Entire provinces went quiet in defiance, waiting to see what he'd do first. His response, recorded in his private journal, was not to chase the silence and demand it explain itself. I quote Marcus Aurelius, "The best answer to anger is silence." End quote. There's an irony here. The same tool being used against you, withholding words to punish or control, was something Marcus Aurelius recommended as a discipline for himself, not a weapon for aiming at someone else. The difference was never the silence itself. It was the intention behind it, and who it was meant to serve. He wrote often about refusing to let his peace of mind depend on what other people chose to communicate or withhold. Not because their behavior didn't matter to the empire. It mattered enormously, strategically. But he separated the practical response to political silence from the emotional spiral that silence is designed to trigger. Most people facing the silent treatment do the opposite. They chase it. They apologize into a void, over-explain to a closed door, offer concession after concession to a person who hasn't said a single word about what they actually want. Marcus Aurelius modeled something else entirely. Engage with the strategy, if you must, but refuse the bait of the emotional spiral underneath it. The Stoics practiced something called the view from above. Picture your situation from a height, far enough that you can see it as one small event inside an enormous, ongoing life. Rather than the entire emergency, it feels like up close. Here's the direct application. Up close, the silent treatment feels like proof of something, that you did something unforgivable, that the relationship is ending, that you need to fix it right now, whatever the cost. Step back, and it looks different. It looks like exactly what it is. One person's chosen strategy for managing conflict, playing out over a few hours or days, inside a life that contains far more than this one moment. The view from above doesn't ask you to stop caring about the relationship. It asks you to stop treating a manufactured silence as an emergency that only you can diffuse. Practically, this means noticing the pull to fix it immediately and choosing not to act on that pull right away. It means recognizing that urgency is often the entire mechanism. The silence is built to make you feel like every hour it continues is an hour of active damage, when in most cases, letting it sit costs you nothing you can't recover from. This isn't advice to go silent in return. That's just matching one weapon with another. It's the decision to stop treating their silence as a countdown clock you're required to race against. Take that off the page for a second and put it somewhere real. You'll see this in a partner who stops responding to texts entirely after a disagreement, only to resume once you've sent several increasingly apologetic messages. You'll see it in a parent who goes quiet at family gatherings until someone, always you, breaks first and smooths things over. And you'll see it at work, in a manager who simply stops replying to your emails after you've pushed back on something, leaving you to guess whether you're still in good standing. Different rooms, same strategy. Silence as leverage, applied until you supply the concession they were waiting for. The view from above works the same way in each version, not chasing the silence, not matching it, just refusing to let it set the terms of your own peace of mind while it runs its course. A few things worth carrying forward, not as rules, but as reflections. First, separate strategic silence from someone who genuinely needs time to regulate their emotions. The difference usually shows up in duration and pattern. Healthy space has an end in sight and gets communicated even briefly. Weaponized silence tends to escalate the longer you wait and repeats in the same shape every time there's conflict. Second, there's real research behind why this tactic works as well as it does. A landmark study by Eisenberger, Lieberman, and Williams, published in Science in 2003, used brain imaging while participants were excluded from a simple ball-tossing game. The finding was striking. The anterior cingulate cortex, the same brain region activated during physical pain, lit up during social exclusion, and its activity tracked closely with how much distress people reported feeling. Being frozen out isn't a metaphorical wound. Your brain processes it along some of the same pathways as an actual injury. Third, knowing that doesn't mean you have to keep re-injuring yourself, waiting for the silence to end. You're allowed to live your hours normally while it plays out, rather than suspending your entire day around someone else's chosen strategy. A necessary clarification, and an important one. This is not about assuming every quiet moment from someone you care about is a manipulation tactic. People genuinely need space sometimes. Overwhelm is real. Conflict avoidance rooted in fear is not the same thing as conflict avoidance rooted in control. Not necessarily every silence is strategic. Some of it is just two people who don't yet know how to talk about hard things. The pattern worth watching for is repetition, escalation, and whether the silence reliably ends the moment you've apologized enough, regardless of whether you actually did anything wrong. Somewhere, someone is sitting by a phone that isn't going to buzz for a while, rehearsing an apology for something they're still not sure they did. Sun Tzu would have told them not to fight a battle they can't even see the shape of. Marcus Aurelius would have told them the fight was never really about the phone. The door will open again, on their timeline. What you do with your hours until then was always yours to decide. Thank you for watching.